Hello and welcome to Mr. Chewy's Go Home video. This is a little bit of a long one, but he just had a lot of stuff that he did pretty well at, and I wanted to showcase different scenarios of him doing that. So that was a down, verbal down. And I give him a cookie right on the floor between his legs so that he doesn't feel the need to meet me halfway for that cookie. I bring it right to him, right between his front legs. And then I throw a reset cookie. I call it that because it kind of resets them from the down. So then he can come back and I can ask him for another down, and he does it. So I asked him for a sit. He gave me a down. I just give him a little bit of spatial pressure to get him back up into a sit, and then I reward him when he does do the sit. And when I reward him for a sit, I make sure that I reward him nice and high so that he can differentiate the sit and the down rewards very differently, because the down reward is right on the floor, whereas the sit reward is right at his face. So this is a place command. I tell him place, I gesture towards the raised cot that he's on, and then I give him a cookie on the cot. I like to reward on the cot because then the association with the food is straight on the cot itself, not necessarily with me. And I reward him periodically as he is staying on the cot. So his place command is a duration stay. So as soon as I say place and he gets on it, that means that he's not allowed to get off until I tell him he is okay, which his word is okay for when he's allowed to get off of it. So you see us jumping around, doing lots of different things to distract him, but he stays on that bed just fine, and I reward him for his hard work of doing nothing, which is very hard work, especially for this guy. He always likes to be doing things. So here I'm offering him a remote. He chooses not to put his mouth on it, so I give him a treat for that. He does have a history of chewing remotes and electronics, so I made sure to use my... They're not fake ones, but I went out to Goodwill and bought some that have no use to me, so that if he did by chance chew it, it wouldn't have been a problem. And he did not once try to chew them. He at most sniffed them. So whenever he gets off of the place bed, I say no, and I walk up to him, or I grab his leash, or I grab his collar, and I lead him back to the place bed, and I remind him that he is to place. And that way, you know, he chooses to stay on the bed because, one, he gets food for it, and two, he gets put right back on the bed anyway if he gets off, so there's no point in getting off. It's better to just stay on and get the food. So here he got off of the bed. I said no, and I blocked him from getting the food that I had just put on the floor. And eventually I grabbed his collar and led him back to that bed.
See, I handed him that one because that was personal. That was me saying, thank you for not playing chase and running away. Good boy.
And then after a little bit of duration stay, being back on the bed, then I give him a reward. And I am purposefully asking Bailey to be distracting here. So there's toys on the ground, there's food on the ground. Bailey's playing with both of them. He is doing very well at staying on that bed. We pick up the food because if they fail at something, so like when I dropped that food, he broke his place command. I like to try it again after he's been given that correction to see if he learned the proper thing to do. So the proper thing to do would be not to get off of the place bed, even when there's food on the ground. So then I give him okay, and he's allowed to get off the bed and do whatever he wants with the toys. Once I give him an okay, he's allowed to do whatever he wants, you know, within reason.
Yeah, you turn on the TV. Good job.
So here's a down, even with toys and such surrounding him. And then I lower him back up into a sit with a piece of food in front of his nose.
Is anybody outside? Juno and Sugar. Okay. What are you doing? Place.
So there I said place. He didn't quite go to it quickly enough, so I took another step towards the place, and I gestured pretty big. There's a better rendition of that. And that is why I always do the thing that they failed at or didn't do too well at a second time, to make sure that they remember what I am asking and to make sure that they can do it properly.
It's a good place. It's a good boy.
So I'm just being distracting.
Radar's chest looks bad.
So here's where I do the food drop again, and he does not get off of the bed this time. So I go back and I give him a handful of treats because he did super good, and I want to make sure that it's worth it for him to stay on that bed. He's not going to stay on the bed just because you want him to. He's going to stay on the bed if you motivate him to. And the motivation would be praise or a reward like a toy or food. In this case, I believe I'm putting kibble on the ground, and because he's ignoring the kibble on the ground, he gets hot dogs from me. So that's a pretty good trade if I would say so, if I was a dog. So I give him an okay, and he's allowed to get off the bed. This is a little bit of work with Leave It. So he doesn't know it super well, but we did get the foundations down. So I put a piece of food on the ground. I say leave it. Sometimes I put my hand in front of it just to make sure that he knows, hey, that thing that's there, I'm blocking it. Leave it alone. Don't go for it. And he did pretty good. Sometimes he was a little impulsive, which is understandable, especially if he's a little bit on the younger side.
Leave it. No.
So if he goes towards the food, I put my hand in front of it,
No.
and I say no, and I might remind him to leave it.
But it's a hot dog. I want the hot dog.
And then once he is able to leave it and control those hound impulses,
Yes, good.
then I give him treats straight from my hand.
Here's your hot dog.
Try not to reward him with the thing that you told him to leave, because that can be confusing for them. So I make sure to have treats in my hand that he is allowed to have versus the treats that are on the floor.
Boy.
Of course, you can pick up the treats on the floor and put them in your hand and then use them as rewards later, which is definitely what I do. Here is a controlled exit out of a doorway. So I ask him to sit. He thinks about it for a minute, but he gives me that sit. So I open the door, and when I open the door, he goes towards it. So I close it again, and I wait for him to give me that sit. I help him out just a little bit by gesturing a sit. And then once he stays and I'm able to open the door without him bolting through, then I say okay, and he is allowed to go through. He struggles with that one just because he gets so excited to go outside, which is very understandable. But with some consistency and making sure that you do that every time that he goes through doorways or like to the back door to go outside, then it'll make sure that he catches on pretty quick. So here we're doing a little bit of loose leash walking. So as he pays attention to me and follows where I'm walking, I give him treats. He's a very happy, bouncy boy. He really is so sweet. So I reward him with a cookie when he gives me a good behavior. So walking next to me or looking at me, those are all things that I treat for. And you'll see when he pulls at the end of the leash to keep going forward, I turn around and I start walking the opposite way, and I give him a little bit of a tug, like right there. And I don't wait for him to follow me, I just keep walking. And he catches right back up and gives me a beautiful little prance and a heel with eye contact, and I reward him for that. So the idea is that he will repeat behaviors that have been rewarded because he wants that food. So here we're ignoring the distraction of the kid on a bike who actually drove right past us. And so I asked him for a sit. He does that. I asked for a down. He does that. He gets cookies for both of them. He gets double cookies for a down because he stayed in the down position. That's how you start to build duration for it. I didn't really bother too much with duration for his stay because we had some other behaviors that we wanted to work on. So to get him to sit in a heel position, you'll put a cookie right in front of his nose, and just hold it upwards like this. And once his butt hits the ground, then you give him that cookie. So his nose should follow the cookie upwards and his butt should hit the ground. So here's a pressure sit. So upwards leash pressure. You can tell it's very gentle leash pressure, and his butt goes down, and you release the pressure as soon as his butt hits the ground. So there's downwards leash pressure with my foot, but you can do it with your foot, you can do it with your hand, whatever works. So downwards leash pressure means lay down, and you can see I don't really have to put very much pressure on it for him to understand, since I've taught him how to turn off the pressure.
Yes, good boy.
We are walking in a park, and he's a little bit distracted, so being on a loose leash is totally fine. I don't need him in a heel. But as long as he's on a loose leash and not pulling me, we can go where he'd like to go. But he does also need to mind me, so when he hits the end of that leash, I just hold pressure. But he didn't really pull there, so I wasn't holding pressure. I'm just waiting for him to acknowledge me again.
Chewy.
So then I put some pressure on, and he gives in and comes to me, and I give him a cookie for making a good choice. So the idea is for him to follow the way the leash pressure is leading him.
He's a cutie pie.
And he's very good at that.
Pie.
Except for when he's on a really, really good smell. But that just comes with repetition and time and practice.
Good job. Thank you. Good boy.
I really like it when dogs give me attention on a walk, because that means that they're checking in with me and being aware of where I am. And here I'm not asking him to heel or to look at me. I'm actually wanting him to sniff, but he keeps giving me his attention, which is awesome. But I also want him to be able to sniff. I wasn't rewarding, but I give in and I give him a reward for that, because it was pretty good attention and pretty good checking in. But since there's not a whole lot to sniff, he wasn't looking to do that. He was looking for treats, which is also totally understandable. So here's what an ideal walk I think would look like with him, is a nice loose leash, walking him past, structures, things that he can sniff. This thing that was left here that I let him smell all the smells on it, but he didn't pull towards it, so he's welcome to sniff it. And I stop and I wait and I let him sniff, because he is a hound, and that is his absolute favorite thing to do. Since one of his main focuses in his board and train was leash walking, I did include a lot of that in this video. So in this instance in particular, I turn, but I turn in front of him. So that can help him realize that he's not to walk in front of you. He does like to cut across and get in the way of your legs. And I know that with Bob, that is a problem. So in order to curb that behavior, you can turn, but turn towards him in an about turn. And in this specific instance, we had been walking back and forth for a minute or two, and he was tired of it. So he plopped his butt down and he said, no, I don't want to do it anymore. So he did this a lot for the first maybe 3 days that he was with me, just because he's never been made to do obedience before, and that's totally okay. But I need him to know that we need to keep doing the obedience in order to do the fun stuff. So I tugged him along. I just put constant pressure on it and walked forward, and after a second or two, he came right to me and he walked with me. We did 1 or 2 more laps of healing, and then we just sat here and we played some games with our food, and we did lots of praise and lots of rewards and things like that to kind of get him back into the groove of wanting to do things with me. But we sat there for a good 5 minutes, just hanging out and watching traffic and watching things happen. But of course, I wasn't going to bother you with 5 minutes of that in a video. So here is leash walking in a neighborhood. He did very good. At first, he did require quite a few about turns to get him to focus on me a little bit, because I live in the country and we had not walked on a sidewalk with a bunch of houses and Halloween decorations. But he caught on very quickly, as you can see, and I have a nice loose leash. And when he cuts out in front of me, we turn around. And when he darts in front of my legs, I just keep walking.
Yes, good boy. Good job.
Because like I said, he does
Yeah,
like
he's
to
a smart
dart in
boy.
front of your legs,
He's a
which
smart
is
Chewy. You
inappropriate.
want a treaty?
And here he's giving me a fantastic heel with little bouncy steps and some eye contact.
There you go.
And I reward him a little bit late on that. I should have rewarded him as he was looking at me, but he got that piece of cheese anyway. This is our field trip to PetSense. So this field trip was all about smelling new smells, just not pulling on the leash. And when he did, I held that tension. I didn't let him go any further. And I waited. And I waited. And I gave him a couple tugs on it to kind of stir his memory of how to turn the leash tension off. And he walked back with me, and the leash tension was gone. So because he's so distracted with the smells, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to give him a treat fast enough, and that he didn't really care about the treat. He more so wanted to smell all the smells. So his reward is going back to being able to smell on a loose leash. I did not focus on obedience in the store, again, because I just wanted the loose leash. I wanted him to be able to explore, smell all the foods, smell where all the other previous dogs had been, and he did so good. But when he, would get in front of me and stop paying attention to where I was, I would either put tension on the leash and or turn around so that he would remember that I was with him. And it was us together going into the store rather than just him in the store alone pulling me along.
Down.
So I asked for a down. He did not give it to me, but it's understandable because it's in a distracting environment. So I give him another chance. I say down again, and he does give it to me, so he gets a piece of hot dog.
Down.
Here I am trying the down again. He avoids doing it in his willful little hound ways. He gives me a half down sit sort of thing, so I use leash pressure. Just gentle leash pressure with my foot downwards to get him to finish that down. And he does, so I give him a reward, and then I let him up, and then I try that again.
Down.
Because when he, fails at something or isn't able to do it right once, I want to be sure that he knows how to do it correctly. So this time I said down, and he downed, and I give him a cookie for that, and I give him pets and praise on the floor as well, to make sure that he knows that that is a good thing that he did. He's so cute. And this was just funny, so I wanted to include it. I don't know why he decided to climb into this crate. I actually treat him for it because he's being confident, and I really like that. So he can have some food for climbing in the crate, even though I didn't ask for it. That's up to him. He can have it.
Come out the way
He's
you
just
came
being
in.
silly.
You gonna jump? There you go. Good boy. Good job. Yeah. Down.
Here's another down, just because he was having some troubles with it, so we walked to a more secluded area and tried it again. And I made sure to give him pets and praise after he did so to keep his spirits up, because obedience is not his favorite thing, but when he chooses to collaborate with me and do that obedience that I asked for, I want to make sure that it's a good experience for him. Though he is a hound, so sometimes he will be more willful. So just getting him through that by having him complete the obedience and then giving him his reward afterwards, which might be freedom. Freedom is a reward in itself. But thank you very much for bringing him to me. I really enjoyed having him. He was such a good boy. Didn't chew anything while he was here. Did great in his kennel. Please let me know if you have any questions. I would be happy to answer those for you. But he also very much enjoyed playing with other dogs and just hanging out in the yard. I think he had a good time.